Welcome to Wrestling with Heart, a podcast looking at pro wrestlers giving back to their community. Join me, Stanley Carr, as I interview wrestling's hottest names who use their platforms as entertainers to raise awareness and do community service. Hello, and welcome to another edition of Wrestling with Heart. This is the show where we talk with professional wrestlers and professional wrestling personalities about their lives in and outside of the ring. And with me today, I've got a very special guest. He is the founder and owner of Hamin Media Group. Ben Hamin brings his decades of experience in pro wrestling to channel attitude, and he has perfected his craft working with OVW during a high point in the company's history, becoming one of the most controversial wrestlers on the independent scene. With a mind that tackles conspiracy theories and a mouth that may make you laugh or cry, you are sure to be either offended or red-pilled by the master of the $5 face slap. Ben, welcome to Wrestling with Heart.
Yes, rise and praise you, Stanley Carr. That's right. Hacker Hamin has invaded the airwaves, and he's aiming straight for your heart out there, infidels. So rise and praise the one true Saladin bin Hamin Yolo.
All right.
So good to be here, man. Good to be here with you.
All right, let's get into it. It's my pleasure.
Yeah,
so tell me about your upbringing in childhood.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, going back in time, first, shout out to all your listeners, man. Thanks for tuning in, and all the Hamin Media Group members and Russo brand members. Yeah, man, I grew up in the 80s. I was born in 1977, but I had a pretty cool upbringing. The fact that my parents both very blue collar, small town lifestyle. But my dad was a top athlete in high school and college and wrestling and track sports, and ended up being amateur professional lumberjack. So I grew up on the lumberjack circuit, and I saw a lot of what I would deem real men, big characters, larger than life characters. And learn how to put on shows that way. And then, I did all the sports that you usually do when your dad's an athlete, football, wrestling, baseball. But I got involved in theater, and I was way more into the showman side of things around, I started out even early on, like 6 years old, in my training that way. And then about 12 years old, I started doing professional theater. So I really grew up at the Capitol Theater, and was so fortunate to have that stage to learn on, and great mentors that came through. And from the 12 years old till the time I left for college, I was pretty much on stage all the time.
I love to hear that not only did you come from a family of athletes, but you got into the world of acting.
Yeah, man.
Like very few wrestlers you really come across that actually have such a background in the world of theater.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about, like,
I think that's why MJF stands out so much.
Oh yeah. Oh, no question about that. That musical theater background goes a long way. And to see how many people, like, I remember reading an article about, I think his name's Skylar Aston.
Okay.
He was in I think he was like in the Pitch Perfect movies. He was talking about on some interview, he's a big wrestling fan. And to hear like so many people that come from that world that get into professional wrestling, it's really cool.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, I had a blurred vision as a little kid in my life of, here's my dad who's, a super heavyweight and like throwing axes and running chainsaws. And my uncle's name is Bear, and like they hang out with Tiny and like all these guys. Right. So that was the peak of Hogan era, like 85, and people would come up to me and be like, dude, your dad he was a 4-year varsity athlete, and he would just tune guys up. He went undefeated in high school. So like all these guys from my hometown, when I'm a little kid, would talk about him, put him up on a pedestal. And then I would turn on wrestling and see this pageantry. And then I'm on tour with these guys that look like the WWE roster, except they're doing lumber sports, So I really crossed the streams of like the pageantry of it all, along with the testosterone side. So, but instead of sports and whatnot, my personality kind of comes through Oh, and so you could see it in my matches
Yeah,
more than my athleticism. But that's what sells tickets and tells stories, man, and gives
definitely.
people what they really paid their ticket for. Moves don't mean anything if they don't have a story attached to them and you're doing them in the right spot.
It's all about that psychology. That's
Absolutely.
definitely essential to a professional wrestling match. So when you're doing this theater thing, getting into the
Mhm.
productions, what kind of plays did you enjoy doing the most?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's limited at that time in the early 90s to mid 90s of what people are going to pay for in summer stage, you know. So you're just doing all the standards from Rogers and Hammerstein. I mean, from Oliver to Little Shop of Horrors, Fiddler on the Roof, Hello Dolly, Damn Yankees, Guys and Dolls. I mean, the list, and I've done these shows multiple times in multiple cities. So I mean, it's a great time, and also doing all of like the vocal competitions on the East Coast or making all Eastern things like that. And I went to an art school, Fredonia University State School, Fredonia, and there I got involved with a show that's still running now. We just had our 25th anniversary called Random Acts, and it was one of the first cast members there, and that show has taken people to Second City, and really the most famous alumni is Nice Peter from Epic Rap Battles of History.
Hmm.
Has over 4 billion views on YouTube. So I mean, he's rap with Snoop Dogg and everybody in between. And there's plenty of other people that generationally that have done wonderful out of that show. And I had a really good day with some people from Second City who came through on tour company, and they said you need to go to Chicago. So I kind of led the charge and brought out 5 or 6 of my friends from that show, and then we studied at Improv Olympic in Second City and performed and became main stage players there for 6 years before I did a show with I hate to keep name dropping, but Jordan Klepper, who's on the Daily Show, is a phenomenal comedian. And they had Ed Ferrara on, who was Vince
Hmm.
Russo's former writing partner during the Attitude Era. And Ed was so nice to me. I did bits on there, some lucha libre bits, because Jordan had asked me to. And because they knew I was a wrestling guy, like dirt sheet guy or what have you at the time. And Ed and I closed the bar down, I believe, till 2:30 in the morning, and he let me kind of pick his brain. And much like the same great comedians who told me to go to Chicago, Ed said I needed to go to OVW. So I started to visit, and then within 3 months, I humbled myself and start all over again and put yourself at the feet of new masters and try and learn your craft and be as excellent at as you can. And you know, the war with Afghanistan and Iraq was in full swing. This is
Hmm.
2006 and 2005, and Ali and Omar Akbar were there in the crowd, and I can play any character, any ethnicity, pretty close to any ethnicity, I guess, that you want to believe I am. And he put us together, and he said, "Pops, you're with the Packies," and da da da. And every day on the TV, they were saying insurgency, insurgency, insurgency. So were the insurgency, and gas prices went from 225 to 475 over the next 2 years. So like all we had to do was walk out and people wanted blood, you know. So it was pretty cool, and training under Rip Rogers and Al Snow and Joey Mercury, and just gaining all this knowledge as much as I can of whoever was coming through every week, you know. And Cody Rhodes was there, Ryback, Beth Phoenix, ODB, Serena Deeb. I mean, Rick Victor. It was a great class. Sean Spears. I mean, the list goes on and on of phenomenal workers at that time. So if you want to get better at whatever your passion is, you have to surround yourself with the best that there is and be humble and hopefully be accepted to some degree, but also shut up and learn. And within a year and a half, I was writing TV at OVW. So a phenomenal experience, but it comes with a big sacrifice of, you know, starting over.
Yeah, you definitely hit on something when you talk about creating characters and having.
Mhm.
One of the cool things about professional wrestling is that over time, over the years, there's always been that finger on the pulse of what's going on in pop culture. And as you said, there was the war going on. And so bringing on somebody to play a character, play a role, and then they had vignettes that would
Mhm.
come out before that person would debut. You don't really get to see that a lot nowadays.
Well, it depends on who's taking care of their own business, you know. I really like some of the stuff that Darby Allin directed for himself. I think the guys in Pretty Deadly, even though they're doing comedy, take care of their own business and just what they came back with. Del Close, the father of improv, would say the work can handle anything if you approach it with the right respect. That being said, in today's woke culture, people just want to cancel even based on trying to broach this topic like anti-Semitism, like MJF is doing right now with the roll of quarters, right? And I
Mhm.
think he absolutely can pull it off. I think he can play at a high level. Um, are they going to go back to Muhammad Hassan with my character like stuff to do Bin Laden with Hamas and Israel? Probably not
No,
ever,
no.
but that doesn't mean we couldn't. It just means that those with their finger on the pulse don't want it to happen. So that's why, I stay the character I've been since day one, really. Bin Hamin, or actually, Bin Hamin is really me, and Ben Doer is my CIA cover character that
Your
they made me for.
alias.
Yeah, yeah. So, all
Yes.
this is the character, the real me.
I got you. I
But
got you.
like that pays respects to 9/11 victims. Even people might say I get cheap heat. Well, is believing a fake official story a better way to move on with your life and do a hashtag and put a magnet on your car, or is really looking at it and touching the bruise, that the touching the open wound that will never heal, the better remedy? Because you're not going to see Bin Laden get killed. You will see me get beat in the ring, and that helps ease some PTSD at the end of the day. But
Mhm.
we got to get heat before
Oh
we
yeah.
can before we can pay that off.
Very old school. I love to hear
I'm
about
so
that.
old school,
Yeah,
bro. I
man.
mean, that's why my gimmick, I've been, here we go, name drop, but that's why I've been fortunate to work with Hacksaw Jim Duggan in his later years 6 times. I've been able to work with Sergeant Slaughter, one of the last ones to do Piper's Pit with Roddy Piper, Tracy Smothers. Like, these are things that I could only have imagined. I wanted to get into this business to be a director and the lead writer, and I've lived my wrestling dream 100 times over compared to where I ever thought I was gonna be, man.
Well, when we talk about wrestling and talk about characters, it's not easy. It's no joke. You have a lot of training that has to get done before you're able
Mhm.
to lace up those boots and step into a ring. Tell me about the training process for you.
Yeah, man, I probably should have started in beginner's class, but I had gotten a hold of Rip Rogers, and Rip said, "Come on down." And I was thrown into the deep end real quick. And in Chicago, there's the archetype of, I mean, I wasn't as big as Chris Farley was, but there's the fat guy on the team or whatever, right? On the
Yeah.
improv
Hmm.
team.
Yeah.
So everyone plays their little like archetypes in that world. And then switching from comedy to wrestling is a completely different mafia to join, like
Hmm.
way more intense politically, and you're getting tested and walking into traps and you don't even know it or know why. So you have to have somebody to smarten you up, and thankfully Jamin Olivencia, who's much younger than me, was a big mentor in that keeping my eyes open of shut up and don't say nothing right now, and then you
Right.
see how it goes for people who do make the mistakes, and then I'm not going to do that. So that's just part of the hazing process of the carny side of this business, I guess. But sorry, I don't want to go off track. My training was with Rip, and at that time Rip's class was filled with a lot of people wanting to live their dreams who were non-contract, who were trying to get signed, and people who were intermediate or had been released and coming back to try and get over. So you had some really good wrestlers training with Rip, and then you had complete buffoons like me or the announcers or the referees. But at OVW, it don't matter. You just don't go, oh, I want to be a manager, oh, I want to be a referee. No, you train to be a wrestler, and that's part of the proving it. And once you learn Rip Rogers' psychology and why things are done the way they are, you have no choice but to become one of the best wrestling performers on the planet, wrestling psychology minds. So, and that was Rip's kind of everything Rip does is an fu to the world, but but that was Rip was going to take. Didn't matter what goof walked through the door. If they had the willingness to learn, the humility to be coached, he's going to take your little Play-Doh mind and mold it into some beautiful statue of David of wrestling. Like that's what Rip does. And sometimes it was just to go, I can take anybody off the street and make them great if I want to.
Yeah, it's just like you said, it's like a piece of art and it just comes to life within
Yeah, man.
months and years. And so you started and made your debut. Uh, I bet it was nerve-wracking at first when you started competing.
Yeah, yes and no, because I was coming out of a reasonably, I'm not going to say I was a top guy in Chicago, but I was in the upper tier, right? So I had just done the Improv Olympic 25th anniversary show where I talent handled like Mike Myers, Andy Dick. So like a lot of like top names in comedy were there. And I don't get starstruck like that. So it's not like, oh, here's this person. I've already learned that lesson because I showed up there as a grown man, 28 years old, so I'd already put my time in undergrad college, then did it all in Chicago. And it was like time to go, well, am I going to LA or trying for the Saturday Night Live thing, or am I going to be really stupid and do this wrestling thing? So,
Yeah.
because all I really wanted to do was bring Chicago level improv to WWE. And those WWE people and AEW people who studied with me are a cut above everybody else because of the small bit of Jedi wisdom I've been able to impart on them. Like I really would love to see the whole NXT system be revamped and integrated with what I consider Improv Olympic Foundation improv that is really untouchable, to be honest with you. When you can do that, you won't even need writers at the end of the day. When
Really?
you if you had a whole crew of people trained at that high level. But Rip would say, you can train at this for 3 months to a year and whatever you might know. But Rip would say, boys, it takes about 8 to 10 years to really understand this. And then when you do, that's when your body starts failing you because our body is our instrument, right? And it can only
Right.
take, you only get so many punches on your bump card. And when they're all used up, you
That's
feel the
it.
pain every single day. But the life's cruel joke is that's about when you really start understanding how this stuff works, man. 10,000 hour rule with everything.
Yeah, I mean, even when you're like 3 to 5 years into the business, you still are learning something new that never goes away, never
Oh, yeah, you
stops.
have to be open to it all. Otherwise, like what do you want to do in as a performance artist? You want this buzz. It's the most powerful buzz and control of an audience you can possibly have. And if you're just going to go out there and mail it in for an envelope, well, then this ain't for you to some degree. Like
Oh,
I get it when you're at a top level and the money's crazy, but when all you have is the love and passion for it, you got to put all that into your performance. And
yeah.
MJF is doing what he does at a young age because he's got the 10,000 hours. He was doing this at 6 years old. A lot of pro wrestlers are great athletes, but they're still kindergartners when it comes to learning how to do character. They're not going to get that till 10 years in their career and understand this is what I should have been doing the whole time, right? But it just depends. Their sword athletically is sharper than mine, but character wise, mine is much sharper than theirs.
It's amazing to see how he's evolved over time, MJF, with his work, not just in the ring, but just as a character. It's just
Yeah.
probably the biggest heel, I would say, in the modern era.
Yeah, with a promo and getting over, right? And being that guy and as good as a heel you are, that's as much of a baby face as you'll be. You got to be extreme on both levels. But really, you're also seeing a second tier teaching of OVW of why he works the way he does and works smart. Because Pat Buck and the Major Brothers and Hawkins and Ryder, and I believe Kevin Matthews too, were his trainers. And all those guys, we took the belts off the Major Brothers when they went to go become rated R's or edge heads, right? I actually got to have them pitch me that, and it was
Oh,
pretty
really?
cool. Yeah, man, I got to punch that up a little bit. That was one of the first things I got to work on that made it to TV ever.
Nice.
But those guys are great. Hawkins and Ryder were very, very cool and love this business and have been fans their entire lives. And really, Ryder or
Matt
whatever you want
Cardona.
to, yeah, Cardona, whatever you want to call him. Dude, the guy's been so far ahead on everything, and they
Oh,
left
yeah.
millions on the table. He looks like an absolute stud. He can cut the promo. He was the internet champion before anybody was marking out for the internet stuff. You know what I mean? He had all the toy stuff. Like these guys are good businessmen too. And then Pat Buck, who I managed Buck for a year. I had a feud with him for a year, and I managed him for a year. And now, he might not have made a WWE TV as a worker, but he made it as an agent because his mind is super sharp coming from OVW and East Coast Indies. And then quit the day after WrestleMania and jump ship to AEW for probably double the paycheck. So, like, these guys know this business, man, and those are the dudes that have MJF's back too. So he's not going to make bad decisions without consulting with these guys who've seen it all and have been put through every test already.
So you've written stuff as well as wrestle. Tell me about what made you decide to pursue that end of the
Mm.
business.
Yeah, well, when you're in Chicago and doing the improv thing, that usually leads to being a writer on or a performer. Saturday Night Live, those spots are smaller, but chances are you're going to be writing for Hollywood to pitch your Netflix show or whatever it is, right? So that was just the mindset I was in. Instead of like, I'm going to be the star. But a lot of times I guess my own ego maybe has driven it that way, but or the opportunity to help others and shine and create good stories for the crowd. But that's where my talent really lies, is not just in my performance, but seeing other performers and then pulling that out of them and showing them something they didn't know they were capable of, and teaching them the tricks I've learned from masters of improv theater and comedy, because I know a lot of them are just athletes and they want to get it, but they don't understand why. And I have a very rare talent based on probably my genetics from my father running these woodsman shows. And my dad runs the biggest woodsman show in the East Coast, or did for 40 years. And, that's 400 volunteers and 46,000 people coming to see it. And he was also the head of the fire department for years. So I've seen what it takes to be a top dog and be humble, put your ego aside, and help others get that performance, or make sure the team, the improv mindset of yes and group mind, active listening, is how I live my life, the Chicago style. I don't say no, but why question. I take it as it comes to me, and I turn it into something even better than it was handed to me. So all those things were like leading me to be, because I said out loud, I'd love to be the next Vince Russo. I remember saying these words in the late 90s in college before I went to Chicago, and I knew I had to get better at improv to become something special. And now I've gotten us, we have allegedly had a consultant thing with USA Network where we consult with them, and our notes went right to the top dogs at WWE. And then some of your favorite or not so favorite storylines have come out of my mind to WWE in a way. So, there's all people like, oh, you didn't make it because of this, that, and the other. Well, I spoke it to whatever in existence, and it turned out kind of weird. But now I'm business partners with Vince Russo. I consulted on Monday Night Raw for 2 years, and Stevie Richards is right there as one of my best friends every day digitally, to be there through thick and thin. So it's very strange. It almost feels like you're living in a simulation when those things happen. It might not be right, me flying in the Vince McMahon jet, but this is pretty damn good for where I am right now, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, you're very multi-talented and you've got all these irons in the fire, whether it's
Yeah.
wrestling in the ring or creative writing,
Mm-hmm.
just so many projects, just the door is open to do so many different things. And that's really cool about the wrestling business. There's a place for anybody to
Absolutely,
thrive.
man. Absolutely. And there's a lot of great workers who will that could outwork most of the guys in the main event, and they get asked to be referees. We need everybody in the circus. Nobody's more important than anybody else. The clown is no more less or more important than the lion tamer or the lion for that fact. And it's just about being humble and wanting to be a part of the cast, and if you play it right, maybe your time will come, or if you have an idea, or maybe you're just happy with that level, that's completely fine, so
It's what you make of
fastest,
it.
yeah, absolutely. And how long you want to do it, everything runs its course, and a true artist needs to be challenged and constantly changing. So for me, the other side of that is my business, because that gets me adrenaline rush as well. So I have a local social media management company that I own and run. I have Hamin Media Group at Channel Attitude that covers all the wrestling shows plus locker room shows, and an awesome staff and community of listeners, and Facebook community. And we do watch alongs, all that stuff, and doing stuff on my Patreon at Hamin Media Group. Uh, so there's that, plus the wrestling, and then teaching wrestling and Upstate Wrestling Entertainment. And then the other thing is, I'm right in the middle of closing a deal on opening legal New York State legal cannabis dispensary. So my
Ooh,
life is shifting in all
yeah,
times. My brain is split kind of into 11 or 12 different segments, and they're all kind of operating at the same time, just to keep
keep going.
juggling all the balls in the air at the same time,
Yeah.
man. So
Well, let's
but
kind of switch gears a little bit and talk about the stuff you've done
mhm.
outside the business, outside of the wrestling world and the Hollywood world, the writing world. Let's talk about some of the charity work that you've done over the years. If there's any organizations or things that you've done that have helped somebody out with anything that you care to share.
Yeah, man. Well, my mother was a teacher her entire career, elementary school, and that's in me as well. And I've taught at college level for 5 or 6 years, teaching all types of media and theory and all that. But when I was substitute teaching, I enjoyed that, working with students with disabilities or special education. I'm not sure what they've rebranded it now. I don't want to insult anybody, in that, because they can come up with 50 different titles and make you sound ignorant. But working with WWE to help do some of that, the one woman's name, I think they inducted her in the Hall of Fame, actually, Palma Brox, to work with them and get students to go to wrestling and meet and greets and things like that, and working in wrestling with local, you might work with the local DDSO, or you might work with the police department, where I'll take tickets and be like, you guys know a family that I'm sure you've been to a call, you know what I mean, the kids need to be out of that house or what have you, and whatnot. I feel like it's not something you, and I know Cena's this way. I don't claim to be any Cena with all the Make-A-Wish great stuff he's done, but you don't really even want to be like, see, we went and did that. You just be like, I know those kids are living a life that I wouldn't wish upon anybody. And if we can help them escape for an hour, 2 hours, whatever it is, you know what I mean? Or somebody who's under constant care because they need that, to provide an experience for them is something special. But then I got to say this too, because at OVW, some of my most loyal fans, but some that hate me the most, would be the disabled section, because I would just come out and Ben Hameen, not as nice as this character is, but faker, I saw you jogging outside. You're a liar. You're just in it for the check. And they be, in with palsy hand, like trying to flip me off, like because they just want to be treated like everybody else does, and they get so much coddling all the time. For somebody to rail on them gives them a different experience. But I talked briefly about it earlier, that the New York State Woodsman's Field Days is pretty much where I was born and grew up. And that's a completely volunteer show. And it's at the level of a mini WrestleMania. Like, it's massive. And to work with people in the blazing sun, or I've worked in downpour monsoons. The third week in August is either 97 degrees or you're getting rained on 3 feet where we are. And to be out there with my brothers and sisters and my family members, and working hard and chopping wood and carrying water, which is a big part of what my upbringing is about. Like, to do the hard work, you put your boots on and you do it. You don't try and get out of it, and you don't point it at the ditch and make somebody else do it. You jump down in there with them side by side and you start shoveling, because that's the only way you earn respect. You can't just point and tell people to do the hard work. You got to lift and carry it too in this life. So that show to me has brought, joy to thousands upon thousands of people, and also probably destroyed my knees and back at the same time. But all that stuff, I like giving back to my community in any way I can, whether it's personal to one person, for a group of people who are having, a way of life that some of us could never imagine, or putting on a show that just provides families the time to go out and do that, man. I like, at the end of the day, when you take that sip of beer and take your work boots off, it's all worth it. There doesn't need to be any dead president check at the end of that stuff, bro.
I like to hear that. It's always good. Even like you said, take the work boots off, and it's your knees and back are killing you, but it's a very small price to pay for the entertainment.
And all we get is what, like, they color code a lot of people there, and they all have their pride. Like, the timers are yellow shirts, security's red shirts. But on the track where I work, on the main, where the chainsaws and axes are flying, with my crew and managing that crew, it's the green shirts. And that is kind of I don't want to say the highest. I don't want to put nobody above everybody else, because it's all volunteers, and they're all doing from the bottom of their heart and giving their time. But when you're a green shirt, you're moving about 40,000 tons of wood over 2 days. Wow. And it's serious business of, like, you're going to break your back. And when you go home with that green shirt, that a t-shirt becomes a thing of pride based on the effort you put in alongside your brothers and sisters doing that. And nobody can take that sense of accomplishment away from you. And there's no price that you can put on it, really. Wow. So, and everybody, I hope you have something like that in your life. And if you don't, I'm sure there's something in your community to get involved with. And it doesn't matter if it's Little League, or people throwing axes, or even your local independent wrestling organization, because you're probably a fan if you're listening to this show right now.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say, Ben, thank you for coming on to Wrestling with Heart. It means a lot to me and the listeners and viewers. You plugged it earlier, but just in case they didn't hear it, where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, if you're a Twitter or X lover, I guess, at @bin_Hamin, and at Hamin Media Group is the social media team's putting out all our clips there. And Hacker Hamin on Instagram, if you want to see that, and Bin Hamin on YouTube, and there's all the $5 face slap videos on there. So if you want to experience it for yourself, bring $5 to a show, and I'll slap you across your moron mouth and get you motivated in life. You can go viral with Hacker Hamin. The best place to go is channelattitude.com, you guys, and check out everything we got going. $5 a month, Hamin Media Group, all the shows, all the breakdowns, and just having a great time with that community over there. So join us, won't you? But yeah, man, I usually don't do a ton of shows like this anymore because of my time is crazy, but the stars aligned, and I hope that you had a good time. I definitely did. Look forward to hearing from your audience as well, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And you're more than welcome to come back.
Oh yeah, a lot, dude. Yeah, we'll see. I'm at about 110 hours a week right now for business. So as things, check in with me, man. Maybe this spring around WrestleMania time, we'll have some fun and do something along that.
Yeah, we'll reconnect.
All right. Well,
Sounds
I appreciate
good.
it. Yes, we will connect, infidels. That's right. Get your verbal face slap. Cameo.com/Ben Hamin. ProWrestlingTees.com/Ben Hamin. You've just been crushed by the one true Saladin. YOLO.
All right. Ben, thanks again.
Yes.
This is Wrestling with Heart. I hope you found this podcast to be informative and entertaining. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and look out for the next edition.